being an alternative weekly, I think most every alternative, little free weekly tabloid newspaper, most cities have, always have like a best of the city edition, where it's got a big readers vote and everything. And ours tends to be one of the larger ones, I think, in the country, as far as just the overall sheer volume of categories available. So, I mean, when times are good, I have, a standard time frame to put together a 200-page issue of the paper, in the normal couple days to do it. So, yeah, so we just had that, which is, months of work leading up to it. And then, this mad rush. So, and this year, obviously, coming out of the pandemic where budgets are tight, because normally we would run, photographers and models with costuming and props all over town, for several weeks, getting photographs on theme with all these winners, to put in the issue, with huge section openers and everything. And this year, because nobody had a budget, I decided I was going to just do a series of illustrations, and then we would shoot, for these opening pages, shoot the winners on essentially green screen, cut them out, insert them into the illustration. And it turned out great. But I mean, I have 8 of those plus the cover to illustrate. So, I mean, I was working, a lot of overtime just to get those knocked out. And then we got that finished. And normally I'd have some downtime, but we've got some new special sections in the paper immediately following now. So I was, putting together brand new products on the fly. So yeah, it's just been a long month. But.
And the fact that you ended up doing those all by, like, you made a lot of work for yourself in that project.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's one of those things though. It's like, I don't have money to hire out an illustrator in the budget, and while I have a very, very talented group of people in the office working in our department, I tend to be the person with the particular illustrational skill set that this called for. So I end up doing, definitely the lion's share.
And Goblin Mob, how are you doing this weekend? Goblin Mob, thanks for joining in, man. How are you? All right, well, we'll get him back in a second. I'm stoked because honestly, even when you were just saying that, my brain is already racing. Just like, you deal with so many people. This topic point is actually just so right up your alley.
Yeah, I mean, I deal with a lot less people than I used to. I'm now in position and at a company where my department, fortunately, is primarily hands off with direct customer relations. We have sales reps to be the intermediaries there. But I mean, there was a time in, just out of college where, first job, need any job to pay the bills, I was a customer service manager. And that's where I learned my deep, deep hatred of humanity at large. So when you read those, the talking point notes, which brings up obviously the inevitable, the customer is always right. I mean, that just gets my blood up, and I've got a few things to say on that point.
Oh, and actually, and Goblin Mob, I want to make sure we okay. I think that might even be a great starting point, because you and I both know through experience that we're often told that, and there are certain jobs we've worked where we have really had to play that role where the customer is always right. I will be very frank on this. The toy community is actually the polar opposite. This might be like the one industry in the world that I would say the customer is always wrong, it appears. In my understanding, it might be the one, because the issue that I seem to see often is that anything can be explained, of course, flashing can be an homage to old pieces. Shipping can often become part of a factor in what's going down. And I would even say there reaches that point where it's art, and art is up to the eye of the beholder. And therefore, it's very hard to critique what is actually like a craftsmanship thing or what is an.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's weird because we have that situation that we're essentially creating and selling a product, and however you classify that product as art or toy, we've had that discussion before. But at the end of the day, we're also all easily classifiable as artists. No matter what the product is, one way, shape, or form, you can get that definition of us all the way around to we're artists. And people also have very set expectations in their head of what an artist is. And I've even had an employer hired me once, and I was showing up to work, in very clean business attire, and actually was told, go home and put on something that makes you look more like an artist, because I want to take you in front of my clients and say, hey, I have an artist on staff here, and I want you to look like an artist. So that meant, no, take the business suit off. So.
Goblin Mom, thank you so much for joining us. How are you? Dang.
We lose him again.
Dang. So if you don't mind, Zaki, okay, actually, I need you to give me a quick breakdown on that. Sorry, because every time I butcher it, and I need to just like register that in the brain.
With a K, Suki.
Suki.
Yeah, it's actually, I guess, Czech or Slovak, and depending upon which dialect you're putting to it, it's technically Suhei or Shuhei. But my family, in the States, has always just said with a K, Suki.
Okay.
So, and that's cool. I mean, there's not been anybody in the history of the universe that has gotten pronouncing my last name. So,
Goblin Mob, man, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I was getting a bad signal.
It happened.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm glad you were able to come in, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much for popping in.
Am I oriented correct?
You're oriented correct. We've nailed it this time, man.
Okay.
So we actually we kind of jumped a part of the conversation, but I felt like it was a good place to kind of start because as Suki actually brought it up, the customer is always right factor. And I'd kind of mentioned,
I don't know if you could hear me, but you're cutting out. I'm going to have to start it over.
Okay. Sorry, man. But you had mentioned you had some good points that you wanted to bring up regarding that. Did you mind kind of leading us into that? Suki? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I can. It's one of those crazy things that, obviously we've all at some point or the other, either from a customer, point of view, or, having work retail or, F&B or whatever, heard and utilized either sometimes trying to get what we want as consumers, or said in more of a way of a curse, but the customer is always right was originally attributed to the owners of a British chain store. I think it's Selfridges or something like that, department store. And that was a drive back like I think it was 1909, a drive in-house training your employees of, hey, we want to give next level service to anybody that walks in the door. And that was their mantra, which is fine. If you're training employees, hey, we expect you to go above and beyond for anybody that walks in the door, deliver expert service. Great. Unfortunately, that in-house mantra was overheard by the customers, and they took it and ran with it, and it went wildfire, spread everywhere, and everybody felt, okay, yeah, we have to believe that the customer is always right no matter what. And the customers took it and said, you're absolutely right. We are always right no matter what in any circumstance and situation. So it became a in-house mantra and expectation of, hey, do your best for the customer, and turned flat out into, hey, every customer can walk all over you and get exactly what they want no matter what the cost. And there's been articles over the years of the fact that, those kind of customers that come in demanding, I'm right no matter what, and put it out, shove it in your face, demanding that, or tend to be the worst customers. They're the people that you put so much time, effort, and be it make goods or refunds or whatever, so they can be always right. The cost, doesn't balance out. Those are not the customers you want. They don't bring you other customers, at least not good customers. They bring customers like themselves. The headache, just the pain in the butt they are, that it doesn't balance. When you figure in the cost of happy, content employees, the amount of time your employees are spending per customer, and that's where a lot of businesses mess up. They don't factor in that, no, your employees' time and contentness are also variables in how well is your company doing, and ultimately affect how much money is your company making. So, I mean, that it's always rubbed me wrong that, yes, there are situations where you want to do as best as you can to make good with the customer, but you also have to keep in mind to do your best for the customer does not necessarily mean giving away, everything. You are still at the end of the day a business. Your whole goal at the end of the day should be to bring home some kind of profit. And as artists, and I know a lot of us say, hey, I first and foremost just want to get my toys in the hands of people, which is great. But at the end of the day, you also still have a very small bottom line, which you need to be making enough money to buy more resin, buy more silicone, and just keep yourself going. So obviously that argument doesn't hold up entirely. So yeah, it's rough, and you should make good with your customers when they have legitimate complaints, but you should find ways to do it that it's not going to be handing them all their money back and then some. There are many ways where you can be like, hey, I'll, throw a little extra into the next order for you, or I'll, do some kind of makeup, some kind of make good. But, if you've got an upset customer, the very last resort should be giving them their money back. So
I've got to hop in only because you brought something up that I think kind of plays into what happens here, though, because we're using the term business and artist. And right off the hop, you've mentioned we've all hated when also we get slammed with that. Well, the customer is always right? Like that becomes like a dreaded thing when you work retail or anything, or a call center job, and you're told the customer is always right. Like that can usually mean what's coming next and what this person expects from you. But the bigger issue, I think, is that once you're an artist and you're selling, it's very hard to distinguish that whole artist and business line, because you have this prideful moment where you're like, yeah, I'm not working retail anymore. And you know what? I'm my own boss and I run my own business and my customers are all going to be happy, but like, I ain't taking shit from nobody because I'm my own boss now. And the issue is that I have seen that mentality actually verbally displayed in that manner in a story or in a post from various artists, where their standpoint is very much, I'm not part of the capitalistic society. I am not a factory. You can't just demand I produce something or do something. I'm an artist. And what's odd is where they create this separation where in moments where it benefits them to be their own boss and an artist, they can kind of operate how they'd like. When it means being a business, they want to take the side of, well, I'm a business because I've got an Instagram page and I've got a store, so I'm a business. And I'm I'm successful, and it sounds better to tell my peers that I run a business than it does to just say I'm an artist. So suddenly I find you get this weird blurring of the line where some folks would love to be an artist and be able to be their own boss and operate under their own terms, but they also really want to operate as a business as well.
Yeah, I mean, if fact of the matter is, no matter how you qualify yourself, if you're giving somebody your art in exchange for money, you're a businessman to some degree. And obviously it's up to you to figure out how much do you want to focus on being a quote unquote artist who does not compromise, does not sell out and, whatnot, and how much you want to apply the businessman aspect and provide good customer service and, make enough money, like I said, to support yourself. And whether or not it means putting a roof over your head or just buying, the next batch of materials to continue doing what you love, we all still have to, in some way, shape, or form, be a business person. So there's just no getting around it. And you can call it what you want, but if you're selling your artwork to somebody, you're a business person. So I mean, that argument doesn't necessarily hold up with me entirely. And I'll be the first to say, yes, there are certain benefits of being labeled an artist that, part of that stereotype is often hard to deal with, doesn't compromise, blah, 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 blah. So at least there's some expectations, that people have walking into the situation of what the experience might be with you. And artist or businessman or not, I mean, again, you don't want the customer to walk all over you. But do you really want to be just labeled, that jackass as well, and just never budging when somebody legitimately comes to you with, an issue and saying, hey, I got this toy, but, when it arrived, it was broken or whatever, or there was a flaw beyond the expectations of what those flaws would be. And the nice part is, since, it can be qualified as art, there's a lot of leeway, as to, like you'd mentioned, the flashing, tiny little bit of flashing is intentional in this piece of art, but I think that also comes down to in advance setting up what those client expectations are, and telling them, yes, this is what my art is. It includes flashing and, small defects and stuff like that. That is part of the intent. And therefore, then as an artist and a business person, if you do not put that out there and be very clear in the first place, then yeah, you can expect people, contacting you back and saying, hey, what's with this? But at the same time, you also, I think it's an easy expectation that if you're doing hand painted customs and somebody comes back and says, hey man, I see all these brush strokes, give me my money back. I'd be like, it's a hand painted one-off. What did you expect? That's when I tell them to go, take a flying leap. So.
Hey, Mob, while we've got you, man, did you
Can you
feel
hear
like,
me?
yeah, we can hear you perfect. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Did you feel like chiming in on the where do you draw the line on customer is always right, and what do you think needs to be done?
Well, I was telling you a story a while back where when we first started off that I had a customer and he was saying that one of the figures was messed up on the top of the head, and he just said he didn't like it and just didn't want it at all, see if he could return it. So my resolution was to, it was my first experience, so I wasn't really, what I went into doing this is that a state of mind that I had going into it is that I wasn't going to get upset. I wasn't going to try to be conflictive, because that no matter if the customer is wrong or not, if they're going to go to someone else and tell them that experience they had, that might be a customer lost, and it just might trickle down from there. So that was my whole purpose of just going into it saying I'm going to be nice no matter what. So what I did is I refunded him and also said just keep the figures. So I mean, that's how I've handled it ever since then. I don't know if it's so much giving them leeway or, you know, having them kick you around. It's more just thinking about the future, and this is the encounter that you're going to have with someone. Instead of being rude or a little bit condescending or say, no, I can't do that, or no, I just handle it politely, and this is what will resonate in the future. That's what I think about it.
See, I'll admit, like, you brought one up. I don't want to mention the artist because even though they did the right thing, it means there was anything to have to make right. So I don't want to mention them, but I have had an experience very much like that. And admittedly, there's a big difference because with that artist, I now am looking for a way I can support them. The incident didn't work. They went above and beyond to rectify the situation. But now I'm sitting there going, okay, well, this is why it didn't work, but you've got to have something else. You must have something that I can maybe, because I want to show support for you. And right now I'm in this weird position where it's like, you're a hero for doing what you've done. I can't really talk about your saving moment though, because that implies that there was even anything to save. But you're also sitting there being like, okay, then give me something then to praise it, like to be like, okay, like, do you have blanks available? Do you have static figures, you know, and suddenly you actually give a shit versus.
I think you have a limited amount of time. I think no matter how busy I get or how much messages I get, I always respond to everyone. And I always have, if I'm not ready to make a figure in a couple days, you know, why even respond? I wouldn't let it go a couple weeks even, or even a whole week without trying to have some sort of resolution. So I just don't, I think it's unreasonable to have a business and just wait that long and say, you know, I haven't had time. I mean, it's bullshit, because there's a lot of people that hit me up and they want figures, and I'll either tell them I can do it or I can't do it right away. And if I tell them I can do it, I'm going to do it right away, instead of, you know, saying that I don't have enough time, or I do a lot of stuff. You know, I do all kinds of stuff. So there's just no excuse to delay anything. And it's even a matter of fact, if you have that on your information, if you say that you have these ready or you have this available on your website, it's your responsibility to do it right away. It's not your responsibility or your job to sit on your ass and say, well, I'll get it done eventually, just hold on for me. Because that's when it comes to a point where you look bad and you're not helping your customer out. So if it gets to a point where, you know, the customer's upset and they say, well, where's my figure? It's just not going to get that point to me. I think that goes beyond what I would ever do as a business owner.
Well, so it's interesting because actually we've had an interaction where I've actually had a track for you that I've needed to wait for being removed from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And we've even been in that situation where you're like, you can only do so much, but you're trying to touch base at least with this individual and let them know, like, I've sent the request off. Let me see if I can email them and get it sped up any faster. Because the issue is that track was then on several other places that I needed to get it down from, but you've put it all through your distributor and they've put it up those places. So now the distributor's got to make sure it's off those places. I would wonder, like, I debate it all the time if my customer service is on par, because the reality is I think sometimes it's easy to think that, oh, Crumbs does videos. Crumbs buys toys and does videos. That's what Crumbs does. That's his business. And it's like, well, no, unfortunately, like, I operate my own business on the side, which is actually selling and marketing actual commercial beats and sync licensing. So at the same time, it's like, I have to debate these things all the time too. Was I reasonable with this person? Did I actually ensure that they got the product that they wanted? There's times I feel as though I'm hounding the person to ensure they got the product they wanted, because you're sitting there going, this is all digital. I don't have to hire another symphony to come in here or something like that. Like, I didn't paint this and that product is gone. It's malleable. If it's not to your liking, like, please let me know. Like, it's malleable. Offering to give you those stems was for that reason, because right away my brain goes, well, if he decides to take this to someone and they ask for these stems, they're like the individual track files, then he can do whatever he wants with it. They can manipulate it to fit his vision perfectly. And so it's like, it's a tough navigating if you're doing enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys can relate to that.
Yeah, I could say just in general, if where was I going to go? I lost my train of thought. But sorry, but I mean, if that's the whole reason I got out of resin, is that if I was to make an order for someone, well, I'm still going to do it, but if I'm going to make an order for someone, I don't release it with any type of holes or defects at all. So that was my whole reason, is that out of trial and error, I could get so many figures that come out perfect. And then there's a whole line where we could just have a day where nothing comes out correct. And it's just so unproductive for us. So, I mean, just change it back to how you would help a customer with that. It's just, you just got to get it done, and you got to know what amount of time that you need to do that, or you just can't delay on it. If you're going to wait so long and say that I can't get to it, it's nonsense. I mean, this is what you're providing, so you need to get it done.
You have some impressively high standards for yourself.
Well, you have to. It goes behind your name. I mean, from customer service to the way you present yourself on Instagram. Even like, I hate to do like junk posts on Instagram and say, well, this is what's going on. If it's not representative of what it looks like, I like to go down my Instagram page and say, wow, this is so sharp. So just translates to everything. If everything doesn't look good, it's just not going to go up, or it's not going to happen. So from figures to videos to pictures, it's just all across the board how it has to be for me.
See, I'll admit, when I look at my Instagram page, it looks just like my brain, fucking scattered and mess of shit everywhere. I'm like, I might have the most unesthetically appealing page in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't suit everyone. It's just what suits me. I'm not saying this is the way someone should work or everyone should work. It's just working for me. I'm not criticizing anyone or saying it's bad or wrong if you do it another way.
I mean, it's definitely something everybody at least has to be aware of, is making sure that you're turning around that customer service in a reasonable manner. I mean, I'm first and foremost admit to everybody that I'm terrible about having the time to sit down and devote to my hobby projects and everything like that. The day job just tends to suck the life out of me, and it's a feast or famine kind of manner. So sometimes I have lots of spare time to do my own stuff, and then sometimes I have not a spare second. But I also try and be very aware and very intentionally tell anybody that I work with, hey, I have a day job. It's super demanding. Don't expect quick turnaround from me. I will do this as fast as I can. I will keep you appraised of where I'm at with things. And, usually, if I'm doing a logo or something for somebody, I'll be straightforward to, as well, and say, look, I'm also not charging you, top dollar going rate for this kind of service, because you're not going to get quick turnaround with me. So I'm dropping the price because of that. That's my makeup, my make good to you, because of which, and I think, at least hope customers, seem to appreciate that. As long as you're just straight up front with them and say, look, this is how it's going to be. There's just obviously lots of factors playing. And if it was, my day job was purely knocking out toys or whatever, then obviously it's a different story. But, probably most of us, there's some kind of day job involved. So you never quite know what you're going to wind up with time wise at the end of the day to work on other stuff. And I just try and be straightforward about it.
I think even when you're talking about like being straightforward about it, you kind of brought it up at the beginning too. Like, let's face it, sometimes there are just nightmare customers, because the reality is like, if you met 1,000 people, how many of those 1,000 people are you going to click with and actually get along with, right? And the internet makes things fun because now all of a sudden we're engaging with tons of people so rapidly. There's all these different like rules of etiquette based off social engagement, and so admittedly, how do you try when a customer seems like they're just being unreasonable? Like what is like a positive way of trying to satisfy or I don't know, calm that sea?
It's one of those ways. I think you start small and work up. And again, that's kind of the business person in me talking. Because again, the idea is that you don't go giving them, everything free and then some. In the business, my day job, I hear day in, day out, folks around the office talking about, how they did these make goods. And some of them, they just, go cut straight towards, hey, I gave them everything and doubled it. And you're just kind of like, well, but how did we make any money this week? Because you're, in some cases, if it's a legitimate customer complaint, something did go wrong, the customer is not necessarily being unreasonable, and, they're a good customer with a good track record with you as a customer. Yeah, you make good. You maybe then throw in a little extra for customer retention. But there's plenty of people out there that their whole MO is, if I complain loud enough, I will get exactly what I want and then some freebies. And you've just trained someone to be a terrible repeat customer, and all too often businesses, that's their model. Their knee-jerk reaction is, well, let's reward people for being bad customers, and we're not rewarding our good customers. And that's what, just doesn't add up to me. So, my philosophy is, start small and see what can you do to make them happy. Sometimes it's just, I'm sorry, I'm sorry it's not what you anticipated. And they're like, okay, they just want to be heard that, something they didn't like. And a lot of times they're also just complaining to let you know that there was an issue so you can, remedy it moving forward. So I think part of it is making sure you're actually having a conversation with the customer that's constructive and figuring out what went wrong, be it with the product or service you're providing, or there was a problem with their expectations of what they were getting from you. So, I'm a firm believer in just, put something forth, see what works as far as remedying the issue, but don't jump straight towards, all kinds of things, because a lot of people argue, hey, they'll go and they'll tell their friends. Well, if they're a jerk looking for a free meal, there's a good chance all their friends are too. And those aren't people we want, as patrons anyways. So
I do have to interject only because I would say the customer's only real move or power here is their spending power, their purchasing power. At the end of the day, in the toy community especially, word of mouth from one person really means dick all. It really does. The reality is that when I first got into it, you reach out to somebody, you ask them about a piece, their response is basically like, they don't give a shit. They don't want to hear it anyways. If you approach the artist about it, their back gets up quick. Very, very, very quick. To the point that I don't bring it up anymore. Because the issue is that they're all the same conversation. I'll be honest. Every single one has been the same conversation except for one. Like I said, there's one that's like a hero moment. Every other one has been the exact same situation of, that's really weird. Something must have happened in shipping. I've sold X amount. I've never had this. I don't know what to say to you. You need to lower your expectations. I'm not a factory. Doesn't matter what the issue is. It could be the registrations are fucking off to all shit. You could ask one of your homies who makes toys, being like, yo, am I crazy, man? The registrations are off, right? And they're like, dude, that figure could have never made it out of the mold and ever worked. Ever. But you know what? They're still going to share that artist's post and they're still going to buy one. And then they're going to come to you at some point and they're going to say, man, I'm pretty bummed this figure had A, B, C, D, E, F, and you sit there and you're going, weird, I thought I was crazy. I must not know anything about toys when I noticed these issues. So suddenly it becomes kind of like a word of mouth really doesn't mean anything until you get one in your hand and the burn actually burns you. And then it starts to kind of dawn in, and then your purchasing power starts to speak for itself. When you don't have sales anymore, eventually it's because, yeah, people realize if I'm going to put my money somewhere and I'm doing my spending radar, I'm going to put it to that place where I spent my money and it felt really good, not where I spent my money and I felt embarrassed or hurt afterwards. And the reality is that when those people do that,
Or you could even say that, when is that going to happen next to me if an artist reacts wrong? Like, am I going to have this bad experience?
Neil Ewing brought up a really good point that he's in the YouTube comments. They're chiming in. Like, we're in the business of fostering positive relationships with clients and collectors. Your collectors are diehards. That's the reality. We collect the shit that we collected as kids because we love that stuff. If you buy our heart or you make us feel really good, we're going to remember that. And we're going to, like, there's certain artists that, like, you want to do everything in your power to push them down somebody's throat. It's not unauthentic. It's not as though, like, you're just doing some marketing game. You legitimately love the way they made you feel, that you want to just ram that brand or that product down everybody's throat. There's other ones that you sit there and you just don't say shit. That's what I've learned. You just don't say shit. And you let the work speak for itself over time. And maybe they'll get really good.
Well, and you always have to be, keeping up good customer relations, because the reality is most of our customers, most of our followers are good customers. What we shouldn't be fostering is rewarding the ones who are predatory customers, and whether you're big or small, there's always going to be some, interactions out there where they are looking, for a free meal, or it's somebody to go, hey, this person might be the next hot thing. I'm going to see if I can get a few figures on the cheap from them just to hold on to flip or whatever reason, and that's the reality. So I've actually sat in different industry, but I've sat in restaurants and watched people come in, order giant meals, fill the table with plates, take a few bites out of everything, and then call the server over, complain about every single dish, and try and get the entire $200 meal comped. And then I'd be a couple weeks later at another restaurant and see the same people come in and try and pull that thing again. I'm not saying that every customer are these customers, but they're certainly out there. And that's where we got to be careful. And some of that obviously is part of good customer service, is having conversations with our customers, including the unhappy ones. An unhappy customer is not necessarily a bad customer. Doesn't mean they're not going to continue to be followers. So having that conversation, well, what was wrong? How can I make it good to you? And again, sometimes it's as easy as asking that question of, what can I do to make things right with you? Because the really good customers, the loyal followers that really love your art, probably more times than not are not going to, they will not come back and be like, give me a bunch of free stuff. It'll be simple things of, hey, I just wanted you to acknowledge that there was an issue here or something like that, and then you have that conversation. Well, how about I do this, to try and make it good for you and stuff like that. So it comes down to that conversation. But yeah, there are such a things as bad customers, and you have to, at the end of the day, weigh whether or not the bad ones are worth to you return ones. So, and Crumbs, as you said too, there's obviously, they word of mouth, they can, oh, my interaction with this artist was terrible, and yeah, if you did not make an attempt to make good with them, and they were legit, bad on you. But, if you look out there, look at Yelp, look at Yelp reviews of restaurants, and I dare anybody to go through any Yelp review list of comments on any restaurant and tell me that at least half, if not the vast majority of really pissed off comments, look at those and go, okay, those are legit gripes, that the restaurant's not responding to in any way. Half the time you look at it and you kind of go, well, okay, yeah, this guy wrote a 4-page rant, which in most circumstances would be considered crazy, that the place was this bad. And in some cases it is, but you read a lot of those reviews and you realize, oh, this guy was clearly home drunk, 4 a.m, and just looking to just shout at the world, not a legit review. So some of that stuff you have to take with a grain of salt. And I think your average consumer is also savvy enough to realize that, hey, if everybody's saying it, yeah, there's an issue. If a couple people are saying it, probably not an issue. It might be worth judging on my own. So, and I think as long as we're keeping up some level of customer service, trying to make things right with, good customers, good followers, that kind of word gets around too. So, it's definitely a balancing act. Nothing's ever cut and dry on it, but.
And two, I think it's about keeping your dignity no matter what as a seller. You just gotta, no matter if you have the most worst experience with someone, because I've had a bad experience with people and they've become my good friends. So, I mean, you can't judge everyone by saying that he's just a bad apple and you might not want him back, because you don't know what that will turn into in the future, because you just don't know. So, I mean, I'm sure there are people that just go around and are malicious, but for the most part, I mean, it's just keeping your own integrity. I think if you're going to go and get hurt over it, I think it gets to the point where you shouldn't turn it to a certain point and post about it. I know I've seen people post about their bad experience on Instagram and say, oh, this customer was a piece of shit and whatnot. But I mean, at that point, you should be considered a piece of shit going that far and saying that this was a bad, who cares? I mean, this is all stuff that you should keep to yourself. If this level of stuff is exposed, I mean, you're just looking bad for your business. It should just be looking smooth and this is what I'm doing and this is what's going on. It shouldn't roll into customer service at all. When it gets to the surface, it should all be, kept to yourself. So I think that's an important thing about it, the whole thing.
Well, kind of riding on that same thing, like Nostalgia is actually in the group chat here. There's times that you can fire a client, like that does happen in the freelance world quite often. So I do understand how like these artists, when they do have particular customers, if they don't want to work with or deal with that customer because they are a toxic customer or they're a repeat offending like refund grabber, I can see how somebody might be like, you're not worth the effort to go through taking on this client. But when we're talking about like an actual product that might be like a blunder, Neil Ewing kind of dropped it in here. Either way, you got to take the hit, refund or remake. That one's hard for me because I'll admit, I don't think I've ever gone into one wanting a refund. There's been situations though that like I'll be point blank. I'm pretty blunt. They have escalated quickly, very quickly, to the point that okay, you're having a conversation with somebody out of nowhere. They start playing this weird thing of like, well, you didn't send me this amount for this thing. And you're going back in the conversation, showing screenshots. It's kind of like, what are you getting at, man? Like, here's everything we talked about, the amount you asked for, the amount I paid, everything went through, all is groovy. And I was just really honest. I reached that point. I was exhausted. It was a long fucking day. And I told him, I was like, man, I'll be honest. I'm tired. It's been a long day. I don't want to play games. If you're going to try and charge me more for this order, just don't send it. At this point, just send a refund. You haven't shipped out the order yet. I'm good. If apparently it's going to be 20 more. This individual proceeded to tell me I was ready to kick your fucking package over my house last night. And I was like, you need to do whatever will make you feel right now. And all of a sudden, a refund came through with a smiley face. And this person starts telling me, you sound just like my fucking woman. And you're sitting there being like, weird. So far, if I look back in the conversation, your previous employer was an asshole and just fired you. Your girlfriend apparently is always ragging on your ear. And apparently, I now sound like her too.
Yeah,
Everybody
but that's what I'm saying. I mean, like
is
that
awful.
person, it shouldn't even get that far where you know
But-
that information about them.
And
Like,
so
who
that's where,
cares?
but you'd be surprised how much odd information I become privy to. It is one of the weirdest things in the world. Somebody could actually openly come to me and tell me, dude, I am fucking wasted. I have done so much blow. I am blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, you see a figure get published or you see figures go up that look like dog shit. And you're sitting there knowing someone's going to buy that, someone's going to get that in hand, and you know damn well why it looks like dog shit. You get privy to a lot of very strange things when you're the guy who's very excited about toys. I don't want to hear sometimes that you burned through a sample patch of Umu and weren't able to get the quantities you needed. So now you have to charge X amount to replace. I'm really sorry, man. That other dude bought a gallon of platinum or tin cure, and now he's rocking out those figures, and he didn't have that added expense of burning through that silicone. You trying to fight with me and tell me that that's a necessary expense to go in there? I'm really sorry, dude. The first beat I ever sold or the first song I ever put out there, I didn't make back my computer, my monitors, my MIDI keyboard, my sample packs, my interface, my programs, none of it. I promise you, I did not make it back on my first release. But those were things I invested into a hobby I loved and enjoyed.
Yeah, I think for the most part, the only thing you should be telling people is like, I got this figure idea. It's so dope. You have to see it. And why include all that extra stuff? Come on.
And we do have to be careful because it's a weird space we're in where, yeah, we do have to keep things up on the business facade. Like you're saying, some of that stuff, it should not necessarily be put out there for public consumption. But we're also in this weird space where we're talking about art. And, your average person, while obviously, yeah, you can get on Amazon or whatever and rate, the spoon you just bought. But your average person, and when you're talking something like a spoon, it's hard to talk with necessarily any authority, although maybe spoon wise, all of us are authorities. But now in our space, we're talking about art where everybody's a critic, and everybody can weigh in legitimately in one fashion or another. So, it does become a situation where we can very easily trip over our own toes of, how are we talking good business versus how are we talking the creation and distribution of art, and why is this valuable and why is this art legitimate, and how that is something between the artist and the consumer, and is there a duty to have that discussion, and everything surrounding it, that would normally conflict possibly with business talk and good business PR sense, because there's a lot more to talk about, so it's obviously something that's difficult for us as toy makers to kind of try and draw a line of, where do we cut ourselves off at? And it is, it's an individual decision of, at what point do we, do or don't discuss our interactions with consumers or our interactions with other artists, and at what point do we and don't we stop talking about our toys and other toys, in a public forum. So I think to some degree it becomes a gray area. It's not a good gray area. It's definitely loaded with, minefield. So, it's something that we always have to just be cognizant of, hey, do that quick, self-check on, is this something that I want to be putting forth right now in the discussion? Or is this something that's better reserved for, it's a little too much personal opinion. Do I, hold this back until, I'm off social media and all that, and, can have that discussion with other people that are interested in knowing, but just not in front of everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have had conversation with other artists, and some of the people that they've had encounters with, and they said, well, you shouldn't deal with this person because this went on. I don't know. It gets to a point where you have your own opinion and they have their own opinion, but sometimes it's just gossip. And sometimes you got to decipher who's wrong and who's right about it if you don't believe what they're saying. And, sometimes the artist is a bigger person, and then it might be that situation where the artist is a bigger person and the other person is a small time artist. It's just a matter of, who's who. But I mean, it's just hard to deal with that sometimes. I mean, why, even if that person is going to be around? Just recently I had an issue with that. Is like, that's how I deal with everything. Is you have respect for me, I'll have respect for you, and I'll deal with you as such. And if this said person just keeps on smutting up everybody, it'll eventually come out to what it is. And instead of getting involved and saying, oh, really, this is what's going on, or what should I look for? What should I look out for? You're just contributing to that, instead of just waiting back and saying people's behavior will show in time. So I think that's the best way to deal with it, instead of jumping in on something and saying, oh, this is the hot shit at the time. I need to see what's going on. And that's just the way I play it. I think that's the best way. And I never hear about Goblin Mob getting involved in all that stuff, because it's just, I'm too old for that. I'd rather have good relations with people and go to somewhere and say, hey, what's going on? And that's what it's about for me, just good relations with people.
It links back to something that you brought up in here, where you mentioned, like, has something you've ever said or done or posted, I'm just trying to find it in the notes here that I've got on the side, basically affected how you go forward later in this community. And I would actually say it's like, personally, I didn't post for about 2 weeks. Why? I can't post right now for the same reason that you saw the other day. So the same individual that you're talking about, the same fucking DM that you would have gotten, I can't post. If I post anything, I get a very similar DM to that. Now, what's hilarious to me is that I know what this person wants. They would love for me to release the footage. I know that because they've said, release the fucking footage, pussy. And that's when I decided to block them. So what's funny to me is that they have this footage. And the issue is that they've been able to manipulate the situation in this beautiful way where Crumbs is an asshole. This is why I have no respect for him. Check out this 5 minutes from this video. But what's hilarious is that I actually have a conscience. So the moment that interview ended, there's a group of peers that I actually believed that I could approach and say, hey, this went awful. Would any of you be down to talk for a moment? I need to calm down. This went bad. I then said to them the next morning, do you mind if I send you just this segment and let me know if I was out of line? Bro, check me for a second. Do I owe it to this individual? It's eating me up inside. It's on my fucking back. I can't stop thinking about it. I feel as though he has too big of a wall of defense up. I need to know if I should actually be approaching this person and apologizing, reaching out, seeing can we save this in some manner, make it good. Because again, my business technically is unboxings. And technically, in order to make good with my quote unquote customer, the person I've offered to do an interview with, I'm now trying to see, hey man, that interview went awful. Now what's odd though, is that everybody probably thinks that Crumbs thinks it went awful because I snapped on this guy. No, the reality is if I'm at the bar and somebody fucking spits on my homies, you're damn right I'm about to fucking put him to that goddamn bar. So the issue is, this was like a perfect storm, right? For 3 months, you've got this guy coming into the scene. You've done nothing but actually try and support him. You've introduced him to Dollar Slice. You've put him on your lives. You've showed his work to all your peers. You've talked him up big time. And all he's done is constantly come to you saying, look at this person, blah, 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 they're shit. Look at this fucking goon, they're shit, blah, blah, blah. But the issue is now you can't differentiate the way that he interacts with you and the way he interacts with other people, because he thinks that they're silly for not cluing in that he's trolling the fuck out of them, but he's making the same moves on you. And then you're still kind of trying to give him the benefit of a doubt. And then one day you tell all your peers, hey, I'm really excited. I'm about to sit with this artist. And that's when they can't hold back anymore. Suddenly they're all like, you want to know why we've been telling you for a while we can't stand this guy? This is why. And you get slammed with DMs. Now I've got my laptop sitting here ready for the Zoom. I've got Instagram open up on my desktop over there. And I've got my phone trying to plot this with this artist, dancing between the 3 devices. And as I've got the peers telling me why they have no respect for this individual, I'm getting DMs from this guy before I even sit with him for our interview saying, I'm about to shit on all your homies. How quick will you end this if I start shitting all over One Trick Pony? By the way, I hope these guys know if I've never talked to them, I think they're fucking garbage. At which point I'm sitting there going, whoa, okay. I'm now getting hit with this guy displaying the same behavior that my peers are telling me he's been tossing their way for months now. I sit in on an interview with this guy and I proceed to ask him about it. And he sits there choked up, unable to give me any real justified response. When I tried to ask him, hey, based off the information that you've decided that your figure deserves to double in price, and you've even told me that the reasoning for that is because, well, fuck it, if they'll pay this, they'll pay that. Do you feel like explaining that? No, he did not. Absolutely not. And of course,
Well, I think
everybody gets to see that little segment where Crumbs basically asks him about, hey, what did you mean by this comment? And when he actually sits there and says, yes, straight up, if I've never approached you, I think your work is fucking trash. And I said, so just to clarify, not even your opinion, you think it's trash. Yes, it's fucking trash. You're damn right I laid into that, homie. And I told him straight up, I've got respect for these artists that I've purchased that you're saying are all trash. That's what I find is very bizarre. And what's odd is that then I chose to not release any of that. I get bombarded where I've been actually now story posted saying, I'll show you why my art is worth this, you pussy bitch or whatever. And I responded to him saying, dude, I spent the last 2 days debating whether it was worth reaching out to you and rectifying the situation and offering a means that we could actually showcase your toy in a great way. And you've clearly allowed yourself to show your true colors. He said, fuck you, you pussy bitch, release the footage. At which point I said, I'm not going to release it. I don't feel like actually pushing your toxicity into the scene. So now that individual somehow has that footage and they love asking anybody and everybody if they would like a free figure, if they can fucking respect me after they've seen that footage. But the issue is these manipulated footage where I was only giving it to people saying, was I out of line? And now he gets to post it going, look how out of line he was, with nobody having context of all the disrespect, all the amount of bash talking he's been doing. But oh, lo and behold, this individual pops on a live the other day, and what did they do within 5 minutes? Start shitting all over fucking Bootleg Bonanza, who wasn't even there to fucking defend himself. Then what did they do? Oh, moved on to shitting all over Slugger Toys or Slug Toys, who wasn't there to defend himself, as 4 of them sat in a live. That video got what, like 800 views? Lovely, lovely.
It gets to a point where you got to stop putting energy into someone. I mean, you just put too much into that person and it just, you see where it went. As soon as it got bad, and
oh, man,
that's the way I handled it, is that
from February
I just cut
5th,
him off.
I actually feel kind of bad for this person because I had to look back on the file. February 5th. February
But you shouldn't
5th.
even feel bad for him.
I don't talk about this person when people say they've gotten some of his work. I've actually sat there and been like, that's a win, man. Congratulations. Good for you. Never have shouted on his work. Never have publicly fucking ripped on him or anything like that. But yeah, you saw it, dude. I post anything and suddenly you get hit with a DM. And the issue then becomes, well, crap. Why would I, knowing that if I basically post anything, this individual is going to shit on me, why would I then link somebody else to that? Am I really supposed to post an unboxing of somebody if then it gets put in the stories and then 2 seconds later they're basically told why they should hate me? Why it's actually basically a bad move to have me tagged to their stuff? It definitely alters how you have to behave then in the scene, because the issue suddenly is when people come to me and make complaints about other artists now, I just kind of shrug. When it comes down to all other BS, you just have to kind of be like, dude, whatever. Because these guys all still end up liking their posts. They still end up sharing their stories.
Well, I mean, that kind of toxicity and issues that, I mean, people pick up on it, and they respond to it. But it's also that weird space where you don't give them any more energy than you need to give them. Don't give them any more thought than you need to give them. But it's still in those weird spaces, and the Me Too movement, really kind of touches on the same kind of conundrum where, okay, here you have an artist who does amazing work, but you found out something bad personally about them. So do you quit liking the work because you can no longer personally like the artist? And that's obviously an issue that, whether or not any of us put any actual conscious thought into it, that's the kind of thing that everybody has to deal with when they're like, should I buy his work? Should I discuss his work? Or whoever it is.
The community is weird. I'd even say, because like, people want to show support by following, but I guess in my opinion, I see it as mindful consumption. So I don't feel that anybody should be penalized if they choose not to follow another account simply because they're kind of like, I don't like the cut of the jib, doesn't vibe with my doesn't fill my cup, I'm not gonna follow it. But it's almost as if there's this fear that if you don't follow everybody, then you're not playing nice in the community.
Well, not just that though, but you have to figure out, this is social media driven by algorithms. So I might not like person A, but if I don't follow them, I will never be connected to person B, C, D, and so on and so forth. So it's that double-edged sword.
And we have the luxury of sitting back and letting people do what they do, unlike Crumbs Blunt, where he talks to a lot of people and this is what he does. So he has to have prolonged relations with people. So that's a big difference between us two and Crumbs too.
I joked about it at the beginning, and a lot of the times, like I remember even I told Dollar Slice once, and he kind of laughed at me like, that'll never happen. There is going to come that day you ask somebody, may I buy a piece? And they're like, no. I know you, Crumbs. I'm good. I don't want to sell you a piece. I'm aware of that. I am very aware of that. There's also a totally different side of it, right? Like, I doubt there's very many customers in the scene that when they buy a piece, it suddenly has the same expectations. Or if they post a piece, how often are you actually hit up with somebody saying to you, like, asking you to buy a piece? Have either of you ever been asked by somebody, why did you buy that piece? Have any of you ever been asked basically like, hey, I thought you were interested in this. Weren't you going to buy one? Again, there's certain things that become almost very, very separate and different from us, where because and here's the other thing too, that I don't accept free pieces. I don't know. I try and explain that to people because that alters then the authenticity, right? If you give me a free piece, how do I give an actual valid breakdown for it or a valid unboxing? So I don't accept free pieces. But the issue is that people.
I think that dilutes everything across the board when people give free stuff and they're like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And then you get the same thing. And I've experienced that with action figures, like the He-Man classic figures, and people pumping it up because they got big endorsement by them, and then you get them and they fall apart in your hands. It's like, come on, dude. It's like, it does dilute things.
I mean, I'm torn about it. When we're talking strictly artworks, I think it's a little bit different from something that is a product that thousands
Mass produced.
The industry I'm in, it's totally not cool to be like, hey, give me something for free, so I'll talk about it. That's definitely pay to play. But on the other side of things, there is, and it's extremely, it's the norm, that, hey, I will send you a sample, so hopefully you'll have a chance to take a look at it And if you choose to appraise it, great. But obviously, you know, it's realizing that the reviewers don't have infinite budgets, you know. So if they had to make a decision of, well, I will, you know, buy and review toy A, but I can't afford to buy and review toy B, well, it's within the manufacturer toy B's best interest to go ahead and send a sample, you know, to be appraised, to be reviewed. And that's often when, you know, you send something that is not collector ready, you know. So they'll send out, if they're sending a book, sometimes you will get the full finished book. Sometimes you will get a review copy that is not clean cut, does not have the final cover art and stuff like that. And it's really, you send something that is good enough to be reviewed, but it's not good enough for somebody to go, hey, I'm going to permanent collect this or try and flip it, you know. So I can see that being done in our circle where, hey, I want, you know, if it's, you know, be it a Crumbs or somebody else, you know, hey, here's a copy of the toy I'm producing. It's not the final paint job. I'm not giving you the backer, you know, none of that, but I'm providing it to you as a sample that you can review with. Is that good business? Yeah. You know, you also do it without any expectation that it will be looked at and reviewed. You know, and it's when those expectations are there, that's when that moral issue comes into play of, okay, now it's pay to play. And that's when everybody calls you out and goes, you know, well, it's bought and paid for. So of course they said nice things about it.
Mm-hmm.
See, but you bring up a good point, because there's time. It's that whole, you have a social obligation. That's just the reality, right? And especially when the moment you put yourself in an unboxing situation or a toy review situation, like Goblin Mob posts a bunch of toy breakdowns, basically, like where he tells you about exactly what the toy is, what it does, fucking where it comes from, how it poses, breaks it down beautifully for you. But the reality is that we always have to be aware that, like, especially with the indie toys, the one I got might not be anything like the one you get. I can't guarantee that. There's just no guarantee that the one that I got sent or the one that I ended up buying was going to be the exact same as yours. And that even becomes scary sometimes. I shit you not, at this point, I have talked up the One Trick Pony Swamp Thing so many times that if I know somebody bought one, I promise you, I check. I ask them. I need to know. If they post it, I'll DM them. I need to know. Is it perfect? Is it perfect? Is it everything you wanted? Because at this point, there's an issue. I've talked it up. And if you were literally sitting there one week going, I've only got so much to spend, and I'm, well, you know, Crumbs keeps talking about these One Trick Pony pieces. I now need to make sure I didn't fuck you, man. I need to make sure you're not sitting there feeling like Crumbs didn't give me the right advice. Did I mislead you? Do you feel embarrassed now? Because, like, I need to know. That's now kind of on me. And that even comes into, like, most of the pieces. There's certain times where, admittedly, you get people that'll be like, well, you're gatekeeping. No, man. Whether you realize it or not, I film every unboxing. If I did the unboxing and it didn't go hot, I didn't have an unboxing to post for you. It didn't go so hot. And then I asked you, like, what do we do about this? And you were kind of like,
I haven't watched all your reviews. Have you encountered something where it has bubbles or imperfections and you're like, whoa?
Bubbles and imperfections, I try and actually accept that if it speaks to me and it's not something that affects the piece, I try and catch it in a breakdown. So my breakdowns, I try and make sure I focus exactly on the piece so that the consumer can make the choice. Because I do have some pieces that have bubbles that, for me, I still like them.
And then therefore, does it say on them as a sellers that there may be imperfections?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It definitely said that on there as well. But that's where it becomes different, right? And I think the price can change that too. Like, as the price gets steeper, you're almost willing to accept a little bit less than perfect, quote unquote.
I think you're good as long as everybody's making that disclaimer, as long as the artist is making the disclaimer of, hey, it's not perfect. There will be minor imperfections. That is part of the art as I intended. And then as a reviewer, if you're looking at it and going, hey, this is the piece I got, you know, every one of these was handmade individually, you know, they were not mass produced. They're hand painted. There's variations throughout from piece to piece to piece, you know, and then that you're just upfront and you're like, look, some of these tiny imperfections I'm not going to bother to even mention because those imperfections will vary from piece to piece. And I think people get that. And so it's, to me, it's just a matter of due diligence of making it clear, what are you rating this on? What is intended for the piece, and, I think it's acceptable to talk about and mention, yeah, it's got some bubbles here and there, but it's supposed to have some bubbles here and there in it. That's where this artist is with their resin right now. But I think obviously you can also then reach out to the artist, talk to them about where they're at now with their manufacturing process, where they intend to be. That can be included in the conversation regarding the review of the toy. And I also think, just to mention, talking about obviously, buying a piece and reviewing it versus, getting a freebie in the mail to review. There are many levels, obviously, of reviewing where, if you went out and intentionally, hey, I'm going to go get this piece, no matter whether or not it was sent to me, if I spent my own money on it, I want this piece, I want to review it and really talk about it and do a big review. Great. I think there's also not an expectation if somebody sends you one in the mail. And again, there should be zero expectation that anybody is going to mention it at all. But it's okay that you say, hey, I got this in the mail the other day, and let's just devote 2 minutes to discuss this or mention this. And you don't have to give a full-fledged huge review, but you can give a nod to it. And that's very standard throughout many industries, from publishing to radio or whatever, where, hey, we got this sent in for promotional consideration. We'll give it a mention, but, we're still going to be judges at the end of the day of how much mention are we going to, how much time are we going to spend on this?
Well, let's be honest, it even comes down to that lovely intent, as it always does, because I myself have wanted to send something to somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean it's because you're like, and I hope you post about it. Sometimes you're fucking proud of that thing you made, right? You made this thing, you're really stoked about it. You dig this person, you're like, I want to fucking send you something. And it's not because you're like, and I hope you review it. You're just kind of like, I just want to do it, man. And so I do get that too, where it's like, knowing the artist's intent, it becomes really difficult. Because you don't want to rob anybody of that win either. Maybe they'd feel really good or have that win when they're kind of like, shit's been rough, but that Crumbs dude loves toys and I sent him a toy. And you don't even think about it because your brain is more thinking in that line of, oh shit, dude, your resin probably costs this, your silicone costs this. Like, fuck, you're probably making pennies off these anyways. And like, I'm in Canada and shipping is going to be stupid. Like, you suddenly start racking up why it's like, I'll try and catch you, man. Like, I'll try and grab one, dude. Like, don't send one. Like, I've got my eyes on you. Like, it's all good, man. Like, I feel it's almost safer. And then, because even though you're saying there should be no expectation, we're all bad for numerating, right? So something this parcel arrives and you're sitting there being like, oh shit, like, are they going to want to do like an interview style? Will they just want me to just post a picture? Like, are they going to want to come? And suddenly start numerating like, oh shit, like, well, and if I don't do this, are they going to think that, I'm sure you guys get it, right? Like, you send out packages or you do work for somebody and all of a sudden you do this, like, bump the lamp for somebody. And then also you just don't have the time to bump the lamp the same for someone else. And you're sitting there being like, Except Godmob, he rocks out everything at 150%.
Yeah, I think I could say, well, just going back to just give your general views. I mean, it's a responsibility for a company to just go back over it, to say the quality of the product that they're presenting, and then down to the reviewer that you got to be honest about what you got, if this is what you expected or this is what you didn't expect. I mean, even to what I do reviews of Hot Toys and all that, and those things are perfect. I mean, they're mass produced, and I mean, you pay what you get for, even though they are mass produced. So that's what you expect. And I don't know, it's just a matter of what it's categorized. I mean, what the seller is saying. And then, I mean, if it's like what I was saying with my work and saying that there's going to be no bubbles, there's going to be no flaws, or else I wouldn't have put it out. I mean, this is what you're going to get. So I just, that's just what it boils down to, is presentation, and then the what you expect or what you say. I mean, you just can't be saying that, oh, this is awesome, this is the best thing ever, and then someone gets in those bubbles and you didn't say, we already went through that.
I'll admit though, like I have 4 or 5 that I've just never posted because I have no idea what you're supposed to do. And at the end of the day, you make that judgment call where you're like, what is it that you'd like to do? Well, I'd like to celebrate how dope these people were and how awesome they made their work. And then you look at those videos that you never chose to ever put out there in the world, and you're like, what did those videos do? And you're like, make me feel embarrassed, made me feel stupid. What happened when you reached out to the artist? I felt embarrassed and stupid. Okay, well, are you going to post that video and potentially cause anybody else that same thing? And at the same time, all that does is put negative energy out there. So then you're kind of just like, fuck it, bury it. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, you can also do, though, that old thing. If you've got nothing positive to say, don't say anything at all. But it doesn't mean you also can't be like, hey, got this in the other day from such and such. This is part of their new release. That's just the news. No review attached. And yet you've given, hey, you sent me something. I made an effort to give it a mention. But, if you don't feel confident enough to review it, then don't review it. And yet there still was a little bit of the back and forth there. So.
Yeah, well, I've reviewed stuff and it's along the same line, and I've encountered figures I didn't like, and I had to do it. I was like, this is pretty crappy. And I just didn't, I was honest about it. I didn't go out and say it was crappy. I don't do that, but I was more or less saying that this is what it was judged to compared to this, and it doesn't live up to what I thought it would be compared to the rest of the line. So I think that's, sometimes you got to do it, because I was doing the whole line and I had to do it because I was so disappointed. I had to let that be known that I was disappointed in what I got. It was below expectation. It's because if you have a vision of something and you know what it is, or you have a love for some, I know that everything ain't going to be the same as to say that this is what you expect and this is what it should be, because it's not always that way. Everyone has their own way of making things and their own vision. But if it goes what's beyond what you expect personally, it's kind of a letdown. So you got to let that be known too. You just can't say nothing about it.
And I think it's legitimate if you have 5 other figures from this person and the 6th one comes in and it's not up to snuff compared to the 5 you already have. I think it's legit to be like, hey, just to let everybody know, I don't think, and it comes
shouldn't even be taken personal. It should be taken as you need to improve at this. Because everyone that criticizes me, it would be, I need to improve on this. That's how it should be taken, instead of personal and getting mad over it, or going above and beyond what you should think about it. You should say, well, I need to do better. Or maybe you think, well, this is good. I liked it myself. It could have been that way too. But too, it's just a matter of the way that you react and handle things.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to being able to give a good constructive criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks don't know how to do that. I was fortunate. The college I went to, the program there, weekly forced every single student to sit down and have a class group critiques discussion, and taught us how to talk critically about our art and other people's art without everybody getting pissed off at each other.
And that's a bad thing about nowadays. People are so sensitive, and it's just bad. It's just
well, and people don't get what the point of someone having their own opinion is. That's become a toxic word, is opinion. And that's unfortunate, because obviously that's a huge roadblock in front of discussing art.
It's not even that roadblock for that. It was just a roadblock for your growth if you take it personal and don't take it as something constructive. So I'm sure most people are trying to be constructive. If they really were unsatisfied with something, you should take something from it instead of getting upset about it and saying that it's a personal attack against you or your business.
Well, and more to that point of it's the fact that people have to learn how to say something constructive. I mean, it's got to be something that points out what can I do better, not just shit all over it. Tell me what I need to do, how that needs to be improved in your eyes. And obviously that's where the person giving the critique falls flat. They just, I don't like it. Okay, great. How am I supposed to respond to that? And that's where a lot of people get pissed off is, how do you respond to something that gives you no information to go on other than, I don't like it. It's terrible. Nobody should get it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, just out to be malicious.
So I'd be curious, like, in your guys' opinion, then, like if I'm doing reviews of indie toys, you feel that if one comes in and it's a hollow body figure, T-peg articulation, none of the registrations line up, so obviously, of course, it's going to split apart. Or legs are too loose, obviously not going to stand. Or artist took zero time cutting anything off the bottom of the feet. So now, of course, you got a nice big old block sitting on the bottom of the feet. In my opinion, those are all ones that to date, I've just kind of gone, well, fuck, I guess I just don't post that. Because when you approach the artist and said, hey, out of curiosity, like I noticed this thing, I was just kind of wondering. And the response has been, well, it's a bootleg. What do you expect? Or you'll get something like, well, if you want, I'm not a factory. If you want to go buy cheap pieces with no concept, that's your choice. So
it's nonsense to have that attitude. It's like, come on, that goes behind your integrity of what you're doing. If you don't respect what you're doing, why are you even doing it?
Well, it comes down to being able to also talk about your art critically. So, if it's the answer is I didn't cut off, the bottoms of the feet out of sheer laziness, you should get ripped a new one by anybody that looks at the toy. If you can talk about your art and say, well, as a bootleg, I am going after this as an aesthetic choice, being a cheap bootleg knockoff aesthetic that I'm trying to achieve.
And that goes back to putting forth of what your intentions are.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that also then falls on the person talking to them, reviewing the toy or whatever, to, unfortunately, you have to sometimes dig a little bit and try and do it as tactfully as possible that you don't, have walls put up in front of you, but to dig and get out of them, okay, what is it that you're trying to say, that you're trying to do with your work? You got to do some fishing there. So it unfortunately also falls on the person who's talking to them about their toy. So, I mean, end of the day, it all comes down to having a calm, honest discussion that everybody can find out what everybody's about.
Sorry, I'm just taking in some of the YouTube comments here. So Neil Ewing's got, when posting a critique, you have to gauge and be subjective before you're objective. So I'd completely agree with that. Like, you'd have to be subjective before you just completely objectify the piece. If anything, I kind of like bringing people in for that very reason. At the end of the day, like, the more artists that are willing to come in and actually sit and tell me about the piece, the less I'm sitting here trying to guess what the heck happened with that piece. But Nostalgia brought up a point that I'm trying to kind of gauge, because I know that there's usually a bit of a lag time. So he mentioned that attitude borders on the work of being a kind of scam to con people out of cash for junk. And I'm wondering if he is basically talking about like the rustic aesthetic. So I'm not necessarily certain, though quality and skill are objective versus artistic vision, but that vision needs to be explained via an artist statement. There we go. And I would totally agree with that right there. I would say there was a really like good example where you ask an artist about a piece and that artist is very quick to explain, like, well, I'm rustic. That's my style, friend. And you're like, oh, my bad. I didn't understand that. Totally my bad. But, just for future, at the price point you're dropping, there really isn't any excuse for every character to have confused dog head, where the magnets are doing that the whole time. And there's really no reason that when I basically got it, all the arms won't sit in a posable position because the magnets are so weak. And again, the issue becomes when this artist starts telling you,
I'm
well,
gonna
yeah,
start not taking a bath and telling my wife I'm rustic. That's what it is.
right? But we've all seen it. We've all seen it before where it's all of a sudden a piece is $180 and it's all of a sudden it's like a fucking dash of paint across the face, quick little rough paint job. Mwah, good to go. And it's
Mhm.
and so it is kind of tough sometimes. Like, what was the intent?
I think it goes back to the responsibility of the artist and showing if you have confidence in your piece and you know everything that's going on and you're not afraid to show everything, you're gonna present it. I do the full 360 views of all my figures and like this is what you're getting. You ain't gonna see anything fucked up or anything. So it's the artist's responsibility to do that.
Well, and I think as an artist too, if I'm going to go that route personally, where it's rustic, and I'm going for a rustic look, I should also be able to cite all my influences of, hey, look, there's this bootleg toy that influenced me, and look how rustic it is. And it's one of those things. It's just like, if I'm going to say it's rustic, I better damn well know what rustic is. Because otherwise my bullshit will get called out pretty quick on that. So obviously there's a lot of artists out there that are, using, the term rustic or whatever, in place of just being like, yeah, I'm lazy. And obviously those folks get called out pretty quick. And there's a lot of things to legitimize why you're charging what you're charging. I mean, there's a famous Canadian artist who I don't even remember his name. It wasn't worth remembering. But I remember their shtick was, well, I was going to make giant prints, and then I realized, why make a print when the giant printing block I made? Well, that's good enough. And I'm charging X number of tens of thousands of dollars for each of these. Well, I'm also getting my interns to actually make those too. So the limit of my actual art is I sketched out on a cocktail napkin what the art was. And now I'm not going to charge ever anything less than this set, sky high figure, because that wouldn't be fair to anybody else if I ever sold them one cheaper than what other people paid. And there's that certain level of, the bullshit can only pile so high when everybody starts catching on. So I think that'll eventually, bite people in the ass when, you use those kinds of excuses and you don't have anything to actually back it up with.
I've got a good one for you though, only because this is like a double team fuckery. Because I didn't realize that a piece I had bought was actually a collaboration between these two artists, and they were very good friends. And this artist was the reason why I even bought this other piece. So you get piece one in, right? And you have no idea a piece that's coming through the mail is actually a collab between the two of them. And you unbox this one, and all of a sudden you reach out to your buddy being like, man, you told me this guy is so good. Should I even approach him about these? Because like, he's gotta know that these went out like this. And he goes, friend, his work is very rustic. I should have warned you about that. And of course, we get into this big conversation and debate where I'm kind of like, fuck this man. Like, these are amateur mistakes. I need to bring these up to him. And he's very much trying to tell me, like, you just need to lower your standards. And I remember
that's where you got to judge where rustic means like you don't take a bath or you weather something really good.
And that's what I mean. I couldn't understand, like, why is this guy going to bat so hard for homie? Like, he's admitting the work is rough, but he's going so hard to bat for him, telling him, like, you've got to lower your standards. You got to accept it. He's trying to blah, 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 blah. And then the other piece comes in the mail that turns out to be a collab between Buddy, who's defending the crappy work, and the guy who put out the crappy work. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there and you're going, for 180 USD, man, you guys put something together here. And I didn't have to say it. He said it. Are you calling me a scam artist? And all he says is,
so which one did you get first? Did you get the good one first?
No, they were both garbage. They were both trash. I got the
okay.
garbage one from the one guy and asked his buddy going, you told me I should buy one of these, man. what the fuck? And he went, oh, his work's rustic. And then tried to just defend him to the grave. Why I should just be okay with the quality of the work. And then it dawned on me when that second parcel came in and you see both artists' names signed on the back and you're like, no shit, you were defending the fuck out of his crappy work. And then all the pieces start dawning in on you, right? Because now all of a sudden you realize you're like, well, wait, this artist doesn't make solid figures. They make hollow bodies. So why did this? Oh, wait, the body is of that artist. Well, wait, why do you have a cape? Oh, because you're hiding the fact that they all came in like crap. And you had to make the best out of a crappy situation, as Buddy from the collab sent you a bunch of really bad bodies. And you're now trying to make the most out of it. And because it's a collaboration, you're trying to make up for the shipping from his place to your place. Plus, you both now have to get half. So all of a sudden, the price of this is getting up higher and higher and higher. But for what? But for what, though? To cover the shipping between this collaboration that you've made, to buy basically the bodies off that guy. It becomes a big old mess. And suddenly, again, it becomes almost like this weird, like, blue badge of honor. Like, I'm sure a lot of the dudes in the toy scene aren't, like, huge on cops. I'm really sorry. Like, as an outsider, when you look at the toy scene, you're like, bunch of fucking cops. None of them will say anything. There becomes this blue line of, like, defending the shit out of each other. Honestly,
That's bullshit.
Everybody wants to play nice because the issue is that we've all talked about it. Most of the consumers in the scene are toy makers. You stir up any waters, suddenly you don't get to make that toy sale, or you don't get to participate, or you're not included. The last time we had this discussion, I had to bite my fucking tongue because there was an artist in here who sat there lying through their teeth. And you're sitting there going, dude, you've talked to me in private conversations about how that is sure as hell not how you go about business when somebody has an issue. But of course, when we're live on YouTube and we're being recorded, you would bend over backwards for them and please them till they were praising your name. Of course, of course.
I mean, obviously it just goes back to be careful who you're going to work with. It's not just their reputation. If it goes wrong, it's yours that's going to get, drugged down with it. So obviously, if I were doing a collaboration with somebody and they, sent me their half that I did not think was up to snuff, you have two ways to go about it. You don't finish the collaboration, or, you go the full Monty and you got to defend it to the death, if anything's going to come of it. It's a tough situation. But there's a reason why nobody liked group projects in class, because somebody toes the line and everybody else slacks off. And unfortunately, unless you really know the other artist, really are already good working with them and work closely together, I mean, that's a minefield of doing a collaboration.
So I'll admit, probably one of the most gratifying things in the world about that was because I didn't know what to do with these fucking pieces. I now had a pile of these pieces that I was actually just angry because the artist that actually now at this point disrespected me. And I was like, I don't even fucking want to look at these pieces. Dollar Slice was like, dude, I'll take them off your hands. So they ended up going to Dollar Slice. And it was probably the most like rewarding thing as this guy says to you, because I was worried. I thought they were going to show up and he was going to actually tell me like, Crumbs, you're too harsh, dude. These are fine. Nope. Right away, he's like, dude, none of these should have fucking left the shop. All varying states of fucking trash. And suddenly starts telling you like this one here, like the arm snapped while I was trying to put it in, as if, and complains all he wants in the DMs. But what I found hilarious is when he then decided to post the pile in his story, he didn't say, just got these pieces of trash from Crumbs. No. He tagged all the artists in it, and suddenly you have all these artists going, Dollar Slice has my piece. Dollar Slice. Yeah. And then spent the last like hour talking shit about it because it was garbage when it showed up at his door. That's kind of back to that whole blue badge. Everybody wants to play nice. Everybody wants to fucking seem like they're playing the fun game. Everybody's included. And I'm sure he loved that night he had Pamro, Pendragon, Mark Heelis, Toy Qigong, all of them, tagging them in his stories. That probably was fucking awesome for him to have all those accounts sharing him in their stories, having no idea that he's looking at those pieces, talking about how they're garbage. That's that blue code of this toy community where everybody wants to get along and play nice, but at the same time, they don't. They don't want to.
I mean, I think that's just kind of artists at large. I've worked in a couple studio buildings before with multiple artists, and the vast majority of everybody are fantastic. But it's those artist egos. You have to be careful. One way, shape, or form, somebody's got some thing
I
about
mean,
their
at some
personality.
point, can you even say that it's art? I mean, like my daughter, when she was in kindergarten, she came in with an art piece and like, oh, you're an artist, It's just gets to a point where you got to realize that you're not really an artist and you're just doing shit.
Yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
no, it gets into that again, that weird conversation of what is it to be an artist? Can anybody be an artist? In some surface way, yes, everybody can be an artist. But obviously then it comes down to, can everybody be an artist in a manner that you're producing the quality of work that people will continuously buy and support you as an artist? So I don't know that it's, are you an artist? I think it's, are you a good artist? That's all there is to it. You're either a good artist or you're a bad artist. You're a good artist that people will help support you doing what you do, or you're a bad artist where everybody's going, man, this is crap. Sorry. Hate to break it to you. Stick with the day job.
I think that goes back to Crumbs. What he was saying is that these dudes so religiously support each other that there's just no line to draw, that it's just all the same.
But at the same time, it gets really tough because the art curator in my brain understands that, like, when you go to a museum, there is going to be various work throughout the whole museum, and it's not all going to be contemporary, or it's not all going to be realism. There is going to be some stuff in there that's going to be pretty fucking whack, and it might not be to your taste, or it might not be to what you consider being using the principles or elements of design to create an aesthetic composition. But without knowing that little write-up or the intent, we also can't necessarily know. It's up to us to make our interpretation, and then again, it comes back to, well, where do I want to spend my money?
Yeah.
Is it
And then
my money
I think it gets,
I hate?
I think then now that you say that, it gets to a point, do artists really have to have a warning, like a set way of saying that this is what you're getting into? I mean, I guess then it wouldn't be art if you always had that set expectation. Like, I guess, like you said, something is for everybody. So you really can't draw the line if you think something is not good compared to someone else. I mean, who's to say? But I think if it's a quality of work and this is an expectation rather than art, that would be different than you getting a figure as opposed to you getting a piece of a different medium of art. So, I mean, that's when it would be like, you shouldn't have no expectations to it. And what you think about this piece and what this person is just totally different. The lines should be blurred by then.
Well, it's just not letting that ego get in the way, that it's okay if nobody likes what I make and I'm making it just for myself. That is totally cool. You can still be an artist and just make what you want to make for yourself. But if you feel to be validated that you need to be making stuff that everybody else likes, the harsh reality is then you need to be working for it. You need to be constantly working to improve yourself to get to a point where people like and want it. And sometimes it comes down to purely the concept behind it, whether or not that's marketable on its own. It comes down to, are your sculpts good enough that that's marketable? Is your production process good enough? Is it marketable? I mean, there's several varying factors and levels of what would make you a successful artist as far as people wanting your work. But if you want people to want your work, you're going to have to work for it. Sad factor is, even as artists, almost never, other than pure luck, nothing is going to come easy.
And I think the bad thing is that everyone remembers for what you made right now instead of in the past. So this is what they remember you for right now, is what you have going on currently. They ain't gonna take out a piece. Well, I mean, there's some people that do and say, wow, this was amazing, but how often does that happen? It's not very often.
That brings up like a weird thing, though. I think that's just human nature. We get hesitant of creeping. So, for instance, it's happened to me twice actually in the last like 48 hours. One artist was like, I don't know. I was like, oh crap, man. I was zoned out after work. I realized I had missed a bunch of your old work on your page. I scanned it down, and I like a freaking Pavlovianly trained dog that started double clicking on shit that I thought was dope. You're gonna get rained in with notifications. I'm really sorry. I was just gapped out. There was another homie that even he messaged me this morning with a screenshot. Crumbs liked your post 4 minutes ago. He's like, what are you deep diving for, Crumbs? I'd like to post probably at the very beginning of his career. I was just curious. I was like, I've never seen one of his first posts. Like, I'm kind of curious now. You scroll all the way back to like 2017, and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like it. Scroll up like 2 more. Oh, that's pretty neat too. Before you know it, you're like 3 years ago, just creep deep diving through.
Yeah, that's like our hot girl that we see on Instagram.
I mean, I actually try and do the deep dive on people if I'm getting interested in checking them out and their work. To me, it's a little more genuine if I'm doing that deep dive and hitting ones I truly like, as opposed to just, the last 20, here you go. Which obviously everybody appreciates as well, because it obviously at the very least bumps the algorithm. But to me, to see somebody going back and something that I posted 5 years ago to go, wow, this was an awesome piece. I'm like, awesome. Today it still has meaning for somebody. There's obviously some longevity there. So I personally appreciate that.
And I think it's good too, is to keep that quality up so you can reach back and release it.
Yeah. Now, if it was just them liking old pictures of me in a bikini, creepy on many levels.
Now I'm going to have to check your page.
But Bob, you bring up a good point, because actually, like, even as you're saying that, the reality is that a lot of us are very timid. Even as consumers, like, we're still very timid. And the amount of consumers I've talked to, whether they're also makers or not, they're afraid to slide into the DMs. And so therefore, when you're saying, like, sometimes people remember you for what you made right now, it's like, no, we can visualize that other stuff you've made, but we're too chicken shit. We're never going to slide into your DMs and be like, hey, like, would you ever make more of those? We just don't think about it. It's so silly, but like, I reached out to a buddy one time because I was actually editing an interview. And in the interview, I caught that he was actually like, yeah, man, I'll do commissions anytime. And I was like, whoa, okay, wait, I missed this. I was editing it. You mentioned you do commissions anytime. Do you actually do commissions anytime? And he was like, yeah, man, anytime. And I was like, well, just so you know, you might want to make a post about that, because even though we're homies, I had to like really work up the courage today to actually just bite the bullet and ask you if that was a thing. And sure enough, within minutes, he put up a post that said, always taking commissions. Now it's permanently up at the top. Commissions always open. And all of a sudden, you had an order of like 40 figures. And you're like, yeah, we didn't know. I know you think you told us. We need to be spoon fed. Like, imagine, like, literally every time you want me to, like, definitely know something, I've got to be spoon fed it like it's an airplane coming in. And that's the only, unfortunately.
Well, some of that I blame on just the state of where social media has gotten us, and smartphones and everything, where, it used to be cool to have those conversations. And nowadays, it's uncool if you call somebody, actually an actual phone call. It's uncool if you deep dive in their social media and, and check out, pics of what they were doing and know their past. So yeah, it's that weird thing that, everybody's got that trained anxiety now to talk about anything that is not absolutely of the moment. How dare you ask me about my past, or the past projects I worked on or anything like that. Which really is
that way. It shouldn't be that way.
No, it shouldn't.
And I've messaged a lot of artists with no hesitation and asked them about pieces and say, yeah, I really want this. And they'll be like, yeah, I'll definitely make it for you.
Yeah. Although I'm so trained about it, I'll message an artist too about something and always kind of feel like, boy, am I just being the rudest person nowadays of even bothering to ask this question? So, and then that's the unfortunate part of that's how we've been trained.
Yeah. But I think that's an important part too, just to go back to business, is that when you encounter someone like that, I've always tried to talk to them. I've had Instagram face-to-face conversations with them just to talk to them. I mean, it's just about keeping up that friendship, or just getting to know people. So I think it's a good thing for people to to do that, because I never refuse anyone. I always message everybody back, no matter who they are or how many followers. I don't really care about that. I'm more tend to gravitate to following people that have less followers than normal, just so I could help them, and then I'll go like all their stuff just to help them out. I think that's the best thing that we could do.
Okay, doesn't that feel fucking good though? Sorry. I take a second for that because I think sometimes I'm in the same boat as you, and when I see all of a sudden that like somebody you like the creative discussions, great example. So now that all of a sudden like Soki and you'll have like Epoxy Crusader and Death and Strawberries, and all of a sudden like they'll be chatting on the comments. Or all of a sudden you'll have somebody be like, oh, I was talking to Kerfloss the other day. And you just get stoked because you understand that one of the most important things about this fucking shit is community. It feels so fucking good to just be a part of a community and actually participate or be involved. So when all of a sudden you see these little accounts, community came in, like one of the worst things I hate is seeing a small account. Barrio Boba, I remember back in the day when I grabbed a Barrio Boba from him, he had like 64 followers. And for me, it was kind of like, no, that can't be a thing. There's hundreds of toy people in here. I see all my homies have like 400, 500. There's no reason this guy should have like 64. There's a fucking community here of people just like him. Let's pull him in. And that's the way I almost look at it. It's almost like you can have neighbors that live across town from you, or you can have neighbors on the same street as you. And your homies that live on the same street of you, you're going to see them every damn day. After school, you're going to see them. You're going to be running out, meeting up at the corner spot. But the dudes who live across town, you're not seeing them as often. And every now and then you find these little accounts in the toy community that you can tell like, dude, you're across town. You got to move on to the cool street. Like, what are you doing all the way across town? Get on in here. And it's almost exciting to then see like that momentum build. As all of a sudden you see like their account go from like 60 followers, 100 followers, 400 followers, 600 followers. Now your friends are posting their stories and you're just like, yeah, I knew you'd think they're cool. Like, I don't know, man. That's part of the beauty. Sorry. Had to ride off that.
No, that's definitely been great about being part of this community is that everybody is getting to know each other and so supportive of each other. And I think that comes down to also just, to bring things back around to the original talking points, having those kind of interactions and getting to know your customers. The more we know them and they know us, then we avoid those customer issues. If they know, what to expect from you when they, are interested in you doing a custom for them, or a one-off or whatever. The more everybody's put out there that everybody can get to know one another, what to expect, how to avoid, okay, I need to kind of talk to them about this. This is one thing I'm not looking for when I'm ordering this toy. It just resolves a ton of things.
Even I feel unfortunately there's something that needs to kind of change. We've talked about it before, the toxic optimism, because the issue is that if you're seeing somebody's work and they're making a mistake that could be easily fixed with part of the process that let them know. Mm-hmm. There should be no problem with letting that person know, like, dude, you're gonna bang out some bangers if you just make this little change. Your toys are dope. Toys are so dope. Do this one little thing, you're gonna be putting out bangers, and then we all get dope toys. If you never tell them, then they keep making that same mistake. They never improve. They never change it, and then that doesn't grow the dope toy amount.
Well, that's the great thing about things like the Discord groups and all that, is that there is that great back channel where everybody can have those conversations and not feel like anybody's being put in a position across social media where they're gonna get defensive, but you can have your little Discord groups and say, hey, here's a pointer on pressure pots or whatever for anybody who's interested in it, and throw that information out. And if you're looking to improve yourself, and hopefully everybody as artists, toy makers is, you can put out a question without putting it out there on public social media and looking like an idiot as well. So hopefully everybody's utilizing all the tools that are available to us nowadays that, weren't here 10 years ago, even.
I do say that again, like that. it becomes a little bit tough because even with like all the knowledge that's bouncing around, sometimes it becomes even almost harder to sift through to find the most useful knowledge. It's great if you hear that a bunch of these dudes use Smooth On. Doesn't help you if you have no idea which Smooth On product or like how long the cure time, nothing about, you know, all these other factors come into play that it's kind of like, and we've all talked about it too, like you don't really know unless you do. Like there reaches that certain point that like you could read every fucking book, you could plan for every scenario, and all of a sudden you're sitting there just like, well, didn't expect that result.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that, yeah, being able to just go out there and do it and try and fail, it's priceless. Being able to ask your peers, hey, how do you do this? You know, hey, what's your take on this? Priceless. And it's also something that, you know, personally, I believe that ask somebody who's in the know and go out and look for 3 or 4 more answers to my question and then weigh them all. You know, I'll go out, I'll hit, you know, if I need to know something, I hit the wiki, I hit the general Google search, I hit YouTube, and then ask everybody I know, because I want to be able to weigh all the answers, you know, and at the very least figure out what the most common denominator is to whatever it is I'm trying to learn. You know, and I've definitely been accused of over researching before I actually go out and do what it is I'm trying to do. But, you know, I definitely feel more confident, you know, when it is time for me to go out and, you know, make a new sculpt, you know, mold it and cast it when, you know, yeah, I think I have all the answers to all the questions I need. And if I need to fine tune as I'm going along, great. But, you know, it's not a situation where, you know, I'm going to stop myself every step of the way and just throw my hands up and go, I don't know, where do I go from here?
I think my problem is that I'm better with experience, but it's like if there's something that needs to be read, I'm like, dude, there's words. So I leave that up to my woman to decipher the words, and we just go over it afterwards.
You just need to turn your computer onto the dictation mode and have it read it back to you.
Yeah. Someone could drop this into my dreams when I sleep. That works.
For me, I find it's always hard to try and navigate where the best information is because I want it too quick. So the issue is that if I go to a YouTube video, I'm sitting there like, yeah, come on, yeah, I know this part, and then I'm skipping ahead trying to get to like the part I want. And at the same time, if I go to a web page, I'm control Fing and trying to find the part that I want. And admittedly, like I'm really bad for being that person that I almost feel that I don't have the time to stop and devote to absorbing and properly executing. I almost feel like it's like, no, I'm going to be going. And so while I'm going, you're of course trying to absorb and go at the same time, obviously making all these fucking mistakes the whole while, to then finally be like, damn, that probably would have been a lot easier if I probably would have just looked at the instructions or learned first, then executed.
Well, I'm the exact opposite for the exact same reasons of, you know, if I don't know, or at least have a pretty good idea of what I'm trying to do in the first place, I've got 1 hour tonight, you know, by the time I get home, finished walking the dog, done whatever last minute evening homework I've got for the job. You know, I've got an hour before I pass out on the couch. So it's like, okay, I don't have time to just, you know, get everything out, start making a mess, screw it up, and then go, okay, well, to reset and try again, that'll have to be tomorrow. And now I've got, okay, I've got 45 minutes that I was going to be working on this, but now I clearly need to go figure out plan B. You know, so I am doing the exact opposite for the same reason of, you know, my time is very finite. So I hope to make the most of it when I do, you know, sit down and being able to use every minute available to me to the best. So
I just sleep less. Rather than strategically plan my time more, I just go, fuck, I guess I'm going to bed at name stupid time and getting up at 4, And then that way, fuck it.
Read words less words.
There really isn't enough time. I was actually talking to somebody about it again today. COVID has done this weird thing. We have no division between our work lives and our home lives. We are all getting burnt the fuck out. Somebody posted in their story today being like, the symptoms of burnout. And I just had to laugh. I was like, that's just living. That's being over 30, baby. Sorry, that's not burnout. That's just trying to be a fucking human in 2021.
Yeah, that's adulting.
Unfortunately.
I
I know.
Locked down in Canada.
Pardon me, sorry?
Is everything still locked down in Canada?
Everything's locked down here in Canada, and it's been weird. It's always a start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. It's been a lot, man.
Is there
Admittedly,
any talks about it relenting, or is it just going to be the same?
I think it's probably going to be the same for a while, to be honest. Yeah, but I don't know. I don't worry too much about it. I guess the way I don't know. I try not to just worry too much about it. When you've got to, like, I don't leave much. I don't leave my home much. So a lockdown, I'll be honest, actually, and I think this might work for some of the people in the toy community. I've almost benefited from COVID, because back in the day, if you're an introvert or you're agoraphobic at all, or you don't really get out much, it's kind of hard to convince a bunch of people that like can go anywhere to sit at home and sit on a computer and talk shit with you. But when all of a sudden nobody has anywhere to go, and then, they all come into your realm of like, oh, you are sitting at home, bored, you say? Interesting. I can throw that on while I'm doing some work here. So it's kind of worked out in that regard. I don't really mind the lockdown stuff, man. I probably, like, straight up, if COVID and lockdown hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't have been like so submersed into the toy world as I am.
Mm-hmm.
So and I'm sure a lot of toy dudes would say the same. It wasn't, or toy humans. So we were talking about businesses and languages and all that fun stuff and anxieties. Lately, I've acknowledged that, unfortunately, I picture everybody as like, because I've met you folks, so now I understand. I can link your accounts with your faces. Anybody else, it's their work. So the issue is, if you're a male, a female, androgynous, anything under the sun, it doesn't matter to me, because all I'm going to know is your tag name and your artwork. But the issue is unfortunately, language like homies, dudes, it's not inclusive to everybody. And even though I know my intentions are simply to include all human beings, I now understand, especially as a business sense, it's important, in order to be inclusive, that you're gonna have to change that language. I don't know what it is yet. I haven't discovered yet what that most appropriate is. You just say humans, folks. Like, I'm sure you noticed, I've dropped folks a couple times where it's like, hey, folks, because it's reached that point where, unfortunately, in order to operate as a business and make sure that you're not offending anybody, you have to almost be conscientious of, oh, what's a homie? Oh, a homie is a male.
Well, I think nowadays, even beyond that, it's just in the personal beliefs. You just got to leave everything behind and just focus on what you're working on. I think that's the best thing to do. Is just, as sad as it is, now that you have to leave your personal beliefs behind, essentially, it's just essential to what you're doing if you want to have a business and let it thrive. I mean, just having no front, and just, this is what it is, and that's all it is. That's all we're doing. I think that's the best thing to do.
I don't enjoy it, but there are certain levels of transparency that I do have to have. So the issue is that I do bring up my narcolepsy often, but the issue is because that is actually going to directly impact, unfortunately, certain tasks I'm trying to do. So a lot of times, like, I could care less about praise. Praise doesn't really sit well. It makes me uncomfortable. Patience, though, right? Because at the end of the day, I understand my cognition doesn't work the same as everybody else's. The moment that I end up having a narcoleptic episode, my cognition is garbage. I'm hitting black walls with my brain. So in order to actually accomplish certain tasks, I know that, like, I'm not going to be able to. And if I don't divulge that information to peers that I'm working with, then unfortunately they're always going to think I'm just letting them down. And they're going to begin to almost, again, it comes down to that intent. So you don't want to share with them, hey, I'm really sorry, man. I might drop the ball a bit. My fucking narcolepsy has just hit me like a shit brick house today. But you almost have to, because the reality is otherwise they're not going to understand why you're not performing at the level they know you to perform at. And so every now and then you don't want to use it as a crutch or an excuse, but you do need to at least make it aware. I had a manager one time tell me, Crumbs, it's a damn good thing that I knew about your narcolepsy, because if anybody else had fallen asleep during a meeting, I would have lost my shit. Well, what did you expect? You turned the lights off and made us all sit down for like half an hour. Yeah, I was out in like 2 minutes, man.
Oh, you set the mood.
I was done. But luckily, she knew I had narcolepsy, came over, shook my shoulder. Hey, you want to walk around a little bit? So while everybody else sat in their chairs taking in the thing, I was at the back being able to pace around the room, being able to move a little bit. Otherwise, it wasn't going to happen. So it sucks to divulge that stuff sometimes because we want to be superheroes. Like, let's face it, like we all want to be Superman. We all want to fucking be able to go no sleep, nothing phase our emotions, bust out crazy awesome work. We're not, though. And at some point, we have to have a bit of transparency in order for people to at least give us a bit of patience. Don't need their sympathy, empathy, or like, ooh, you accomplished that while having that. Ooh, no, just a little bit of patience, though.
Which is really tough because, again, back to the, my previous point, the age we live in with social media and cell phones and everything, that there's no such thing as patience anymore. I want something, I hit 2 buttons and it's on my doorstep tomorrow morning. So we've trained ourselves to be impatient with anybody and everything. So you do feel bad having to explain that to people and go, look, if you want to work with me, I will give you my everything, but you're going to have a little bit of patience. So, I mean, it's a tough thing, and it's something that, the world at large is just severely lacking nowadays, and that's part of everybody's frustration with everything is nobody has any patience. So.
I was reading a thing the other day that was actually really interesting to me, that the more comfortable you are with somebody, the less likely you are to be able to empathize with them. That blew my mind. They took all these people and they basically said, if we take this whole room and we show them all a bunch of maggots crawling over a piece of meat, they'll all be disgusted and revolted. But if we take a batch and we actually allow them to see a bunch of like really high dopamine, serotonin stuff, they will refuse to believe the discomfort that the other person has expressed to them. And for whatever reason, the more comfortable you are with those people, the easier it is actually for you to disassociate with their level of discomfort or pain. It becomes almost harder for us to empathize with that. And I think sometimes in the toy community, it becomes very difficult with that when you're saying the patience, because it becomes very easy to be able to go, well, with my day, the way it's going, I accomplished this, and have that blinded perception when somebody else comes in and they try and explain how they're maybe having a hard day. They come in and go, nothing's really going right today. Everything's really hard. And also because you're having a great day, you're like, cheer up, man. Things will turn around. Well, that's your perception today because things are going great.
I think it depends on the person too, because I think I tend to do that because I have pain every day. I was stabbed in my spine, and sometimes I have trouble with my legs, and I have a head injury too. And I'm just so used to it. And like, even at the worst times, I had a few times where I was dying in the hospital and I was still in up spirit. That's just the person that I am. I'll still joke around with the doctors and all that. And it's just hard to come back and for someone, if they are in pain or if they are going through a bad situation, be very comforting because this is the way that I handle it.
I think maybe I'm mistaken here, but I think that even comes in sometimes to how we end up when people say, well, put yourself in their shoes. The issue is if you can envision yourself putting on their shoes and tap dancing it, it's very hard to empathize, right?
I don't know. I would say that because all the stuff that I've been through, it's I don't know if I could necessarily say, well, just the way that I handle things. It's just, I don't like to complain. I don't like to say that I'm in pain. I just don't like to do that. So when other people say that they're in pain or all that. It's just hard to relate with them because I never complain about anything.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. Actually, yeah, is like we have a difficult time empathizing if we push through. If somebody says, "Oh, well, put yourself in their shoes," they're having a hard time, they're in pain, and you're like, "Yo, fuck that, man! I'm in pain, and I'm fucking up at 4 a.m, busting out my novel," and and suddenly you can't empathize, and that's what I find does become almost hard sometimes in this community that we're in. Is that like oh my goodness, Suki was saying, everybody wants this immediate now. And at the same time, while everybody wants this immediate now, we all have our own expectations of like, well, fuck, man, I'd bust that out like that. I'd get it out of that fast. So all of a sudden, we all of a sudden have like these crazy expectations that we are setting on each other, while at the same time having all these crazy pressures that we're putting on ourselves.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think it's kind of bullshit to put that on top of everything, because I know some people do that. I know I don't say, well, I don't feel well today, so I can't get it done. It's never been like that. It's like, I'm going to get it done and that's it. I'm going to continue to do what I want to do and it's going to get done no matter what. I think that's, I don't know if it's a bad thing to say, but I think that's the attitude that everyone should have.
I don't have to agree with that, man. What is it? There's like some saying how it's like people who make excuses. There's something about that, and I'm very much that same way. Where it's like there's like when people are continuously making excuses. I'm trying to remember what it is, but there's some kind of saying where it's like they're just not willing to accept yet, right? Sometimes things take hard work, but there's just those people that like it's always another excuse. It's just always another excuse. But it also gets harder too because sometimes I even find myself getting caught in these positions where it's kind of like you wish you could explain simply because you feel so stupid or annoyed with how it must be perceived by others. So like when you're doing those videos sometimes and like shit is just roadblocking you and you're trying to push through it. And you want to be Superman. You don't want to complain or whine at all about like how maybe a certain part of it was just like driving you insane. But at the same time, you are sitting there kind of just being like, hot damn, that was friggin' really hard. And so it's difficult sometimes because you do want to be able to celebrate your own successes or wins while at the same time not, I don't know. I'm probably getting it all mixed up here. We're coming up to almost 2 hours. There was a couple of questions that have been dropped off in the group chat that I wouldn't mind trying to kind of grabbing because I think you guys would have some great ideas on this. Titty Bean asked, what constitutes as a one-off? So I'm curious, in your guys' opinion, if you're buying a piece or you're selling a piece, at what point would you consider that piece is like a one-off, no others go out into the world?
Either a one-of-a-kind sculpt or it's a certain color that's never going to be produced in that color again, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's something that's intentionally never going to be made again, be it a custom request, and obviously in like it's a weird thing with the cases like Titty Bean, what he's producing, a lot of really cool drip and marble effects and stuff like that. So technically everything's a custom, but if you're sitting down and saying, okay, I'm going to make 20 of these, you realize everyone's gonna have its variances. But to me, a one-off is something you very intentionally sit down to make. You're intentionally making something that is either to request or your own. Hey, I'm never even going to attempt this particular again. So, but yeah, I mean, one-off's a tough word for when you're hand making everything. It's obviously easy when it's mass produced to say, here's the one-off that is, made in gold, so it's a lot easier to apply that term when it's mass produced. And I think for us, that's why we use the term custom a lot more, even though customs tends to have a lot more meaning towards taking an already finished product and altering it a little further, be it a custom paint job or you're adding sculpting onto it or subtracting or something like that. But But I mean, by and large, almost everything we do is technically a one-off.
I could give you an example. I did a one-off resin gate figure, minion figure for someone, and it's never going to be reproduced in resin again. It's going to be in Sofubi.
See, my brain went right to that one. I'm glad that you brought that up, man, because that's one of the coolest things for me. You had that one piece that you're like, yep, I made the one for somebody. That'll be it. That'll be all. And it's just like, that's dope in my opinion. I think limited runs or editions, you almost need to be aware that like you're not worried about one person here. You're worried about 8 people, 10 people, 20 people. So if you do like a limited run and you say all these are going to be this one and they'll never make more outside of this, then that's 20 people you've now just basically convinced like they need it now because it won't be remade. Mm-hmm. And if you do plan on remaking it, you better make some kind of justified like change that's changed enough that the completists go, I need both.
I don't even think that's necessarily what some people look for. Like me, if it's just a different color, the same thing, I could just keep on collecting that. So it may be different for some people.
Yeah. Although I was watching just last night, actually, the one of those toys that made us where it talks on the Star Trek toys and how, back in those initial runs, they were up to 400 individual characters that they had made into toys, and most of them were ones that might have had 3 seconds of screen time, but they went ahead and threw them in the line. And then at some point they started doing exclusive limited runs to like 7,000 of a figure and actually killed their own market because their completists who had to own one of everything realized I cannot get this one extra figure and have the full everything, and just dropped it. Just hot potato said, well, I guess I'm done because I will never own the full collection. So I, and obviously, I'd say the vast majority of all of us are not prolific enough and don't have enough of a following, at least at this point, to worry about, the collectors and the completists, being turned off if we were to do, hey, here's a limited run series. But it's always something to keep in mind.
I'll put that out there. I will. Yes, I will. I'd be pissed, man. I'd be pissed. Yeah, I'll put that out there. I will openly put that out there. I'd be very offended. I've even told one artist in particular that like I will be very offended if that piece ever gets remade for somebody else. Absolutely. Now recently I've got a couple pieces that have been commissions that are blacks with white 50-50 limbs. If those got remade, I'd get it. They were commissions I made. Somebody saw it. They went, that's dope. And they wanted another one. The artist never made a claim of like, this is a one of one. So if they never made that claim to me, fine, I get that. But personally, like I am a bit of a completist. I get weird. I don't know how to explain that. And I have dropped series before because I understand that like, I just can't. I won't be able to get them all. You've made it very clear that like, there's going to be a set of this. Why get invested? I can't get invested. I'm fucking weird that way. There's like the brats and the bullies, they're almost different because it's like there's blank colors and then you have to accept you're like, oh, but this dark blue is a little off from that blue. And you end up accepting that like crap, that's a thing. But when you start seeing that like, 8 of this Spawn figure got made and then another 8 dropped that were this version, the moment you realize like, oh, you're making multiples, like, oh no. Or Swamp Toidle. El Hemo, he made the Swamp Toidle. And I looked at the back and it was like, there's 5 of them. I instantly didn't even bother buying one. I would have loved to have, but when you're looking at them and they're like $125 a piece and there's 5 of them, and then you're like, I don't want just the one Swamp Toidle. I want the whole set. And then you just don't. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Godma, but it seemed like you were going to jump on that same one. Sorry, man.
Oh, no, it's all good. Well, I was going to say too that when you have exclusive colors, I think that should be more defined, that this is going to be the only color of this kind rather than this is the only figure that's going to be released. So I mean, when it comes for me to colors, I think I would be patient enough, or I would be impatient about it, but I would eventually try to get that one color that I'd want, even if someone had it by any means. But I mean, it's just a matter of definition. I mean, going back to what the question was about having, what was it, exclusive and
One-offs.
one-off. Yeah, it's just a matter of definition
Yeah.
and making sure that if it's a one-off, it's just, that's it, and that's all.
Yeah, if you mark that 1 of 1 at all, in my opinion, that's 1 of 1. If the moment you put a number on that thing, even with sets, 10 of 10, there has to be a big enough difference in the next thing that I'm not sitting there going, well, wait a minute, isn't that just blank? The other one we ended up getting was from Death and Strawberries. Have you guys ever had to sacrifice added features or paint apps in order to save on costs?
I haven't produced enough to really worry about that, but when I have made decisions of what to include or not include, it's been definitely a cost or time consideration. So there's definitely been times where, I was asked to produce a piece and, I'm like, well, it'll have this, 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 this. And as it's going along, I'm like, well, I've got 2 weeks left before I've got to get it out. Okay, we're going to pull back the reins a little bit on it. And, and it wasn't anything that, doing so obviously, was in a position to worry about pissing off a customer or client or anything like that. Fortunately. And I think in most everybody's job, there's, eventually going to be some kind of situation where, you have a big project and they're like, hey, dream big, what can it be? But, we've got to come in under budget and on time, and you have to make those decisions. And so I think everybody's faced some kind of cutbacks at some point or the other. So yeah, I definitely have. But it's usually been more time consideration than anything.
Now that thinking about it, that's the reason why I cut resin, is because that extra expense, that the leftovers, we have boxes of damn leftovers still, and it's just a matter of that expense and them not doing anything and cutting that 1 cent and making sure that every figure counts.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I've gotten away from resin.
I know personally with the wooden robots, I kind of ran into it. I was so fixated on the fucking articulation, and the arms are so heavy that I put so much time into trying all these different things that make them actually stay in place. And then you finally find the option, but the issue is it's gonna be so expensive that you realize, well, crap, this adds almost $20 to $30 onto every single piece. Why would you do that? What is it? And then you start asking yourself, what does this offer? And what? So then you decide, well, you know what? Maybe down the way I make 3 using that specific thing. And that way those 3 people that go, well, that'd be pretty darn neat if it did that, can go, I do want to spend the extra little bit to have that souped up version. Otherwise, it didn't seem viable to me, especially knowing I want to do a run that's pretty large. Why would I then add that expense on with no guarantee? Something you're going, okay, well, if each bot's probably about $15 extra for the customer, let me just take that on to myself times 30 and hope they move. Does it do what you wanted it to do? Like,
And I think that is one of those situations where, you do your initial toy, and if it sells well enough and there's enough demand and people still asking for it, that even if you said, hey, this is, run a 50, that I think you can sit back and judge for yourself and go, hey, if I were to put out now a limited run of 10 of an ultra deluxe version, that, I can charge a lot more for, that is truly for the collectors that have to have it, that are willing to pay that premium, okay, then you sit down and have that conversation with yourself and are you changing up enough that, if anybody's a collector and a completist, is that going to be alienating and pissing them off? Or is this, changed enough and, upgraded enough that, now it is a new thing. So, I think you just have to have that conversation with yourself and weigh, demand versus the price of doing such a thing.
Styles even pointed out on YouTube here, like he had to delay the hairpiece on his next figure because it was taking too long. So he's going to push it onto another wave with new parts. So every now and then that's even part of it. Goblin Mob, you've talked about how like you wanted to do vinyl right from the beginning, but you had to start with resin. So it's like we almost always have to make some small little compromise that's somewhere to at least get to that final like vision of what we wanted, I think.
Well, I mean, more than that, it's a matter of growing your business. You need that audience to get to that point.
Yeah. Fair. And actually, I'm not gonna lie, man. I'm stoked on those vinyls. Sorry, the shirt and vinyls that you're posting, that's gonna be exciting, man. Sorry.
You got to see the new one that I just thought of last night. It's pretty cool.
Not to be that weirdo, but any estimated date that you plan on dropping these guys? You got any kicking around you want to show us?
I have the picture in my phone, but should I show the picture? I could do that, Crumbs.
Sorry, man.
Oh, the peer pressure.
Show us, right? Oh, how the times have changed when a bunch of men are sitting on a computer saying, show us the goods. Oh, no.
Oh, no, it's bleaching out.
Just an even bigger tease.
Yeah, bleaching out and totally.
You know what? It built
the resin god.
Brutal, man. Well, guys, I've taken up enough of your afternoon. It is 6:20. Did anybody have anything they'd like to kind of add in on the conversation we've been discussing today? Final thoughts or anything with that?
No. I think we covered everything.
Alrighty. I love it. Guys, thank you so much for spending the Saturday here, just bantering off, chilling. I really, really appreciate all your time. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Good to talk to you.
Catch you guys later.
Later.